Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about the Nikon Z50. So I'm Daniel Norton, photographer here in New York. I make videos like this about gear, about technique, about philosophy of photography, and if you're interested in those kind of things, go ahead and subscribe. So speaking of philosophy, if you follow this channel, you probably know that I often say that gear reviews are not that useful, and this is not a gear review. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk a little bit about why I kind of got the Z50 and what I'm using it for and how it's working. This is not an overview. I'm not going to go over all the specs. It's not my thing. What I will say is that the main reason why I'm even doing this is because people have been asking me. So ever since I mentioned I got the Z50, I put it on Instagram or whatever, I got it. People have been like, oh, how do you like the Z50? And then also I've been getting a lot of DMs where people are like, what are you shooting with? What lens is that? It looks so, it's a Z50. So because of that, I decided, I'll do a quick little overview. And I just want to give you a little background as my thought process as to why I got this camera and how it's working and what I'm using it for. And hopefully that will help you if you're looking to get a camera, whether it be this one or whatever. So besides these vlogs, which I use a variety of different cameras for, I also do, you may know, live streams and also technique videos for both this channel and for Adorama TV. So for those videos, primarily I'm using the multicam system that I have with a couple of Sony cameras, which have been fine. I've had them for a couple of years. They do an okay job. I've had some issues here and there with them, and no camera's perfect, but overall they're fine, right? But when I picked up the Z6, like, I don't know, maybe almost a year ago, I thought it'd be cool to have my whole system be the same, you know. This is probably gonna make people unhappy, but I've never loved the stills that came out of Sony's unless you did a lot of work to them. And if you guys know me, I am not somebody that does a lot of post work. So because of that, I didn't go the other way, which would be to buy a Sony as my main stills camera. I decided I like them as video cameras, but I want to, I want to keep a stills camera. At the time I was using Canon and Hasselblad, and then I added the Z6. Anyways, that's a roundabout thing. But I thought, hey, it could be kind of cool to actually have my stills camera and my video camera kind of be the same system, because then number one, it could be a backup, but also number two, everything kind of matches. It kind of looks the same, which could be cool to play with. So I had actually thought, this is the main reason why I kind of picked up the Z6 originally. But then I started using the Z6 as a stills camera, and I actually really like it. So I was like, the Z6 is nice, so maybe I'll pick up a couple more of those. Then this bad boy got introduced, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe that's interesting, because this is probably equivalent to the two Sonys I use. It's APS-C, it's can do the basic stuff. It's not the Z6. The Z6 does better video than this. There's no question there. But for what I mostly shoot, what I'm mostly going to use this for, which is shooting 4K in 30 frames in pretty much lit situations, this I think was fine. I thought based on the specs, I'm like, this looks really good. Then I kind of was kind of deciding, well, should I do that? This is, like we all do. And I was looking at my budget and figuring out what I was going to do. And then this whole COVID thing hit, and I found myself in a situation where I was using the Z6 a lot as a video camera at my home, doing like live streams on Twitch. I was doing that a little bit before that, but doing Zoom stuff, interviews you guys have seen me do. So the Z6 became really great for that. I was like, wow, that's really good. And that again made me start to look at this Z50. I was like, man, I'm loving the video from the Nikon. I'm actually blown away by it. It does everything that I need to do really easily. So this camera is like half the price of a Z6, and if all I'm going to do is put it on a tripod and point it at myself, and I'm not shooting 10-bit, blah blah blah, maybe this would do fine. So I decided to give it a shot. So again, its goal is not to replace a Hasselblad or a full-frame Nikon or a full-frame Canon or whatever. The goal of this is to replace, right, APS-C Sony cameras, which are roughly in the same price point. I think maybe they were slightly more expensive. But basically, that's what it was for, in my mind. It was going to sit on a tripod. It was going to film me, and easy peasy, right, as I said. So I got this thing, and it's nice. Right out of the box, it seems pretty nice. Obviously, you've seen some video from it. I did try to use it for some zoom stuff. It died on me, basically. The battery life, it's not the Z6, and I didn't think it would be, right? It's got a smaller battery. It doesn't last as long. Currently, there's no AC adapter for it. So that made me say, well, I really can't use it for those things that much, especially if it's a continuous thing. I mean, if it's shorter bursts, so I'm recording, like on OBS, which I've used it for, I'll just switch the battery up, which again is no problem. So I definitely need to get the AC adapter on Nikon, get that out there as soon as possible. I use the tether tools, so maybe they have to do it. I'm not sure. But basically, what we're doing here is if I want to use it for long-term video recording, it's not ideal for that, right? So I was like, but I have it, and it's kind of nice, you know? And I actually took it with me when I went out hiking, and I was like, oh, I'll shoot some stills with it. But then I was out, and I was like, well, let me shoot a video. And I did. And I used Nikon Snap Bridge to kind of control it. And it was great. I mean, I gotta say, I mean, okay, yes, it's way bigger when you compare it to like the Osmo Pocket, which is what I'm using right now. But all things considered, it's really nice. I mean, it's not so large, and the quality of it I thought was just very, very good. So it made me start carrying it. So I switched over in the last like bunch of vlogs that you've seen. I've been using this, and again, I've been getting a lot of DMs, and it does a great job. So I think ultimately, and I know ultimately, it's going to replace those Sonys. My only issue with it right now is that because the battery life is not so great, neither is the battery life on the Sony. But those you can charge as you're going by leaving the USB plugged in. This does not seem to do that. Maybe they'll upgrade that eventually in a firmware. So what it means for me is that those are a little bit more viable for longer recording. So I'm not getting rid of them yet. But the color in this is great. The autofocus in this is great. I would say better, but you can both cameras have the same issue that you can't really, if it's on a tripod, like see the screen. That you can't really flip the way that I want it to flip. Nikon does have available if you're like a vlogger, but I didn't think I was going to be using it for vlogging. Like a bar that you get here where it flips down, right? And then that way you can actually see the screen. But to be honest, if I'm going to be vlogging like this and the camera's a bit away from me, I'm not going to be able to see it that well anyways. I'm going to use Snap Bridge. And Snap Bridge is free. So if you are a Nikon user, I recommend that you download it. I don't use the other stuff that other cameras apps, so I'm not sure how good those are. Snap Bridge is not perfect, but again, it does a pretty good job. And I've been super happy with it. So my phone, which I carry with me anyways, plus this, plus my little Rode microphones, which I'm using here, creates a great little vlogging setup for me. I put it on a GorillaPod normally, but I can sometimes put it on a regular tripod too, depending on my situation. And it does a really good job. So I think what I found so far is, aside from the battery being, depleting very quickly, so I'm needing AC adapter if I'm going to do like 3 and 4 hour Zoom meetings. The quality of the video from it is amazing, and it's sharp, as you guys have seen, and the autofocus on it is very, very good. And I'm also using the kit lens, which is the cheapy one that kind of comes with it. I don't know, I think you can probably get it without this lens, but I think when you get it with or without the lens, like the difference in price is like so small that you should just get this lens. Why wouldn't you want an extra lens? And it's been, it's good. It does a good job. I can put other lenses on it, of course, but I haven't needed to. This has actually done everything I need for me. Everything I need, I should say. Okay, so let me just talk for a second about expectations. This camera is less than $1,000 with the lens, right? Which again, I'm not saying $1,000 is nothing, but in the world of cameras, that's a pretty inexpensive camera. It can do a lot of stuff, right? It can do a lot of stuff really well. It can't do everything for every person. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like what I think are some of its strengths and what I might use it for, and some other things, right? So it has audio in, which some small DSLRs or mirrorless cameras still don't at this point. So that's needed for me. If it didn't have audio in, it would be virtually useless for me for video, because I don't want to have a completely separate audio recorder. It's a pain in the butt for me when I'm doing vlogging. For my multicam system, I don't need it, right? So that's not actually relevant at all for there. But, I think as a more versatile camera, that's good to have. It does not have a headphone jack, to monitor, which means that if I was going to be the person that ran around and filmed other people, right, I would not be able to listen to their audio, which is kind of not ideal. So this is a downside. Like a Z6 would be much better for that than this, because I can actually listen as I'm filming. So do you need that? Do you not need that? That's up to you, right? It uses a micro HDMI, which is not my favorite. I mean, I'd prefer to have a full-size HDMI, to be honest, on cameras, but I know that's not going to happen on very many cameras. But the Mini is decent on the Z6. These small connectors just make me nervous. My solution is going to be to get a jerk stopper by Tether Tools and put it here like I normally use for my tethering cable, just so it doesn't pull on it. That's, of course, only if you're plugging into something and using it to stream or whatever. If you're not doing that, then who cares about the HDMI port? So I think those two things, again, they factor in. If, like, let's say you want to shoot into an Atomus, recorder or whatever. You got to be considering that cable, and I do, because when I use it on the Sling Studio, which is my multicam, I plug an HDMI cable into the sender. Now, again, the Sony uses the same one, so comparably, it's the same. So it's not really a down thing for me. I can actually use the same cables, so I'm happy about that. But that could be an issue for some people there. But I think overall, if you look at what this camera is good for and kind of put it in its proper category, I think that you won't be disappointed. So for instance, it's good for, I'm going to put it on a tripod, I'm going to use it and record. If I can get an AC adapter, I can probably shoot all day with it, right? It's good for, I'm going to take this camera someplace that it might get damaged, and if it does, it's not the end of the world. This doesn't mean I'd go to, like, if I was going to Antarctica, that I would take this camera, because there you'd want to bring the most robust camera that's likely not to break. But if I'm going, like, hiking and there's a chance it could fall and get cracked or whatever, I'd much rather drop this camera and smash it than drop, a $3,000 or $4,000 camera. So having it be inexpensive is actually is a good feature. And, sometimes time lapses, like to set this up somewhere as a time lapse camera, because, it's inexpensive if something happens to it, is great. And of course it has time lapse built in, which is very nice. So this is the kind of thing that I would use this camera for, and I think that it would be ideal for those things. And finally, which is most relevant to me, is that this is a great camera for just basic video shooting. It is sharp. The autofocus is good. It shoots 4K, which of course we need that, right? It does have some slow motion ease. I never use that, right? So again, it doesn't matter to me, but for some people that might be useful. So just like anything, right? You're going to look at your goal. Like, so if I look at it from a big outward point, right? What did I want this camera for? I want to put it on a tripod with multiple of them, have HDMI out into a sender, have good, decent low light capability, which I think most cameras do these days. Good autofocus is nice. An assortment of lenses available for it, so that I can easily, switch it up or get more lenses if I want. And this camera suits all of those needs for me. And it does it in a way that I think will work really well, especially since, again, like I said, I'm using the Nikon Z6. In fact, I could take this camera and take the Z6 and shoot them both as video cameras, and then use, let's say, my Canon or whatever as my stills camera, and that would work as well. So it gives me that versatility that I can move these things around. And so for me, that's super useful. If you are already fully deeply into, let's say, Canon or into Sony or to Olympus or whatever, then maybe switching one camera to another system isn't ideal, unless you just are lacking the features that you really, really need. And what I would say is, like I've said in many other videos, is think about what you really need. I mean, it's nice to have everything, right? I mean, I like having slow motion, but what I know I needed was 4K, because one thing that I do specifically is I record in 4K and then I punch in. That's how I am able to film myself, and not have myself cut off all the time. The way that I shoot these cameras is I shoot them with wide angle lenses and I punch in. So since my delivery is 1080, it's just one way I'm able to do it. So for me, having good 4K is super important. So this has good 4K. It has good autofocus. It has a good color. It's sharp. It's Nikon. It's not so expensive. It's not so expensive, I should say. And so it's a winner. This may not be the ideal camera for you. This may be the camera that does everything for you. It really kind of depends. Look at your specs, play with cameras, see which one you think is going to work for you, and then just take the plunge. I mean, that's all we can do in the end. Like, a lot of times you're going to buy something and maybe you're going to be like, it didn't do exactly what I wanted, but such is life, right? That's how we have to look at these things. So I'll be back to technique and philosophy in future videos, guys. I just thought I would do this because I get so many questions. So Nikon Z50, I think it's a pretty good camera. I mean, my opinion on it would be that it is good for me, for what I wanted to do. I don't regret it. I'm not going to send it back. I'm pretty darn happy with it. And you'll see a lot more with it.